What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Must own sleepers for the 2020 season. I love this video. Not because we're expecting all these guys to hit right. They're sleepers for a reason. They're probably not going to be that great. But because it's fun to try and find some breakouts in the final rounds of drafts. So I'm excited to get a few interesting names for you guys. But first, of course, we need to do the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which three quarterbacks led the league with 4 red zone interceptions. Could mean they got unlucky, but it's more likely that they made some poor decisions. They aren't great decision makers. Answers: Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and Mitchell Trubisky. Chris Vaughn, Coach Dan, and Alex Lociero got that right first. So today's stat: which running backs face the highest percentage of stacked boxes? Remember what the stat indicates. If you face a low percentage of stacked boxes, meaning there aren't that many defenders in the box on average, you're going to see a higher yards per carry even if you're not all that good. Just what happens. But players facing a high percentage of snaps with a lot of defenders in the box, it means that the defense kind of knows that the run's coming. They have a ton of defenders there, and you're probably not going to see that high of a yards per carry, even if you're a relatively good running back. So, who had the highest percentage? Last thing before we start, I know I'm going over my sleepers in this video, but it's always relative to ADP. These things always change. So if you want to see my most up-to-date sleepers, targets, avoid all of that jazz, thefantasyfootballadvice.com is the website where you can view that. So let's talk about some receivers. And I've made the executive decision to call a sleeper 12th round and later. So we've got one 12th round receiver, one 14th, and then 3 guys going undrafted. And we'll just go in order of where they're going. So the first guy is Anthony Miller, going in the early 12th round, wide receiver 53 off the board. He's my wide receiver 47. And I'm not sure what the public remembers from last season, but he did start off terrible, averaging a little over 3 targets per game over the first 9 weeks. That's garbage, while playing 56% of the snaps. But then his snap share went up to 75% in weeks 11 through 16, not counting week 17 because that's when he got hurt again with the shoulder injury. But in those weeks, 11 through 16, his targets jumped to 9 a game. Again, though, suffering that shoulder injury, should be good to go to start this season. But posting 12 points per game over that stretch to end the year, even counting a 0.7, week 16 performance, that's enough for him to be a low-end wide receiver 2 to a flex option. So in those weeks, you could actually rely on Anthony Miller in your flex spot. And now I'm not going to say that that's definitely going to repeat this season over a full year, right? But he's clearly the Bears' wide receiver 2 on the offense, and it's not like they could get any worse than last year. Like, the main argument is literally they're a bad offense, right? But like I said, there's nowhere to go but up. And his ADP indicates that people are only remembering the bad, right? I said I don't think I fully know what people are remembering, but I think everyone thinks he had a horrible season. He had a horrible start, not a horrible finish. He was pretty good to end the year. So he's a talented third-year wide receiver, and he's already proven that when he's healthy and when the offense is actually scoring at least a touchdown each week, he can be fantasy viable. So definitely someone you can keep an eye on late in drafts. If you're looking more in the 14th round, then look no further than our boy, Preston Williams. You had to know he was coming up in this video. Coming off the board is a wide receiver 62, my wide receiver 54. If you followed the channel last season, you know how much I like him. You know why I like him. And you know why I am hesitant to take Parker in the middle rounds this season. Because let's not forget, Williams was doing better than Parker before he got hurt. And he was on pace for 120 targets over a full season before getting injured, tearing his ACL in week 9. 120 targets would rank inside the top 20 for wide receivers. So this is a dude who's getting fed the football. And starting in week 3, he was a full-time player. So the wide receiver 2 job is his when he returns, especially since the Dolphins spent 1 of their 11 draft picks on a wide receiver. Kind of crazy. I thought they'd spend at least 1 in the middle rounds, but took only 1 dude, and it was Malcolm Perry in the late 7th round. So he's even going to struggle to make the team. So they effectively did not take a wide receiver in this crazy wide receiver draft class kind of shows they're locked into Parker and Williams as the 1 and 2. If he can return for week 1. We know that the if is kind of the reason why he's going the 14th round. I don't think he'd be going too much earlier than maybe the 12th if he was fully healthy. But the indications are they expect him to be back for week 1. Remember, tore the ACL in, I believe, November. So just keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on his recovery, what's coming out of camp. But if it's looking like he's good to go for week 1, he's being undervalued right now. On to the undrafted wide receivers. First guy up is Alan Lazard, currently wide receiver 67 off the board. I have him at 61. So not a massive gap, but I do think he's being undervalued. And it's a pretty similar take to Williams minus the injury. We know Lazard isn't coming off a torn ACL, but he is the wide receiver 2 on the Packers. And they did absolutely nothing in the draft to address the wide receiver position, so it shows that they're confident in that. They did sign Devin Funchess, but Funchess has one okay season? And with players not reporting until camp at the earliest with likely no joint practices, you can't tell me that Funchess is going to develop a rapport with Rodgers. Right, Rodgers doesn't throw the ball to people unless he fully trusts them. So I really doubt Funchess is just going to take over Lazard in camp. Right when they step in, Rodgers is like, oh, I really trust this guy. That's not going to happen, right? So we really should be viewing Lazard as the 2. Now, I actually haven't been going after him too much in mock drafts, mostly because you don't need to. No one's really taking him. And my general strategy with the Packers is just take Adams or don't take anyone. But if you are in a deeper league, maybe a 14 or 16 team league, wide receiver 2s on offenses aren't typically this cheap. So he could definitely be a solid option if you're in that range. Another receiver being undrafted that I am targeting late is Michael Pittman, being taken as the wide receiver 68, my wide receiver 53. That is a really big difference. And like I said, I'm going after him in a lot of drafts late. The number one thing people have against him is, well, he's a rookie. And especially this season, we're a little hesitant to take rookie wide receivers. Not as much running backs, but wide receivers, we're a little hesitant. But let's think about this from a different perspective. You can't really use that logic with the Colts, right? Because no one on the Colts has played with Rivers. T.Y. and Campbell are also working with a new quarterback. So everyone on that offense is on the same playing field. And given that he is locked in to the X role in the offense, he's got a ton of upside. Because honestly, pretend you're Phillip Rivers. Which wide receiver are you throwing the ball when you get close to the goal line? T.Y., Paris Campbell, or the 6'4" Michael Pittman? I mean, you're throwing it to Pittman, right? Especially when, like I said, you don't have an established rapport with T.Y. or Campbell. Maybe if Brissett was still the quarterback, we'd be backing off this take and being like, oh, well, he'll probably just lean on guys he's used to. Rivers isn't used to anyone, so you can't use the argument that it's the rookie season, he needs time to adjust to the offense. Everyone does, so don't use that argument. So I just think there's no way he should be going this late. He should easily be going in like the 11th, 12th round because he's a great wide receiver, and he landed in the perfect spot. The final wide receiver we'll go over today is Randall Cobb, coming off the board as a wide receiver 79. And I know some of you are like, excuse me? Listen, I know it might seem gross at first, but why is he going so late? I mean, they spent $27 million over 3 years to acquire him, and he's pretty clearly the team's slot receiver now. Plus, what are the odds that neither Brandon Cooks or Will Fuller gets hurt this season? Probably 0%, right? And given that we do still expect this to be a good offense, why on earth is Cobb going as the wide receiver 79? He was actually pretty solid last year, and even though he's turning 30, he still has a few good years left in the tank. And it's not like I'm expecting him to be a wide receiver 1, but would it surprise you if he led the Texans in targets? No, right? I know he's changing teams and that adds risk, but it's the 15th round. I mean, who cares about the risk? He could genuinely be the most targeted wide receiver on the team, and that's a team that just lost a player averaging 166 targets a season over the last 5 years. I mean, everyone was ready to just go all in on QT last year as a sleeper, and that was with Hopkins. So why do people hate Cobb when he will clearly have a role? We didn't even know if QT would. We know Cobb's going to have a role, and there's no Hopkins. I mean, unless you think Brandon Cooks completely takes over Hopkins' targets, which of course he won't, then it means his ADP makes no sense. And for those of you who think Stills is going to beat him out, that's unlikely because they're not going to play Fuller, Cooks, and Stills in 3 wide receiver sets. That's just too many dudes with the same skill set on the field. They'll bring Stills in if they go to 5 wide and they don't want to use both Johnsons, but it just makes no sense to think that Stills is going to beat out Cobb, especially when they just paid Cobb. They need someone to run those underneath intermediate routes, and Cobb is going to be the guy. So those are my favorite sleepers at the wide receiver position for 2020. Remember, you can view my favorite sleepers and targets as they change at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.